Hello and welcome all to the 11th part of the series on self-exploration. Back after a small break. Joining the dots, contemplating, comprehending and sharing it with you all raw. All that sounds great is the grace of all those who have blessed me and lit my path. And all that sounds not so great is my limitation. So let's get going. A story of atoms. Atoms usually referred to in chemistry as a subject. Basic chemistry says elements are made up of atoms. Elements exist as a collection of atoms, like a family with the same surname that reside in one house. Elements have identical atoms, atoms with the same number of protons, neutrons, electrons, with a similar electronic configuration. Same address, same properties. So, they seem to be all together like the members of a family, and they seem to be very, very peaceful. But that's not the real story. In the heart of their hearts, most of the atoms feel unstable. Yes, most of the atoms. Some are very stable by themselves. They are always independent. All atoms have a core, a nucleus, that has positively charged protons and the neutral neutrons. And to balance the positive charge, we have the same number of electrons revolving around this core. So atom on the whole is neutral. The negatively charged electrons never collapse in the positively charged nucleus. Some special forces keep the negatively charged electrons constantly going around the nucleus. Though they are neutral, they are not very stable. They are not very happy. So the ones that are unstable start looking around for stability. The quickest way to achieve stability is to exchange the easily accessible electrons around. Sometimes there is a very pure give and take of electrons that binds both the atoms. And sometimes there is a mutual understanding. There is a sharing of electrons. Some of these atoms find their best friends in their own cult. Sometimes some of them fall outside their community. The whole purpose is to convert the neutrality into a stability. In the process, they gain charges, they become charged. But that is fine as long as they become stable. But there is a ground rule. When two atoms approach each other, there are forces of attraction and forces of repulsion, both. Only when the net forces of attraction outweigh the net forces of repulsion, a bond can be formed. Understandable. So, if things click, bingo, a bond is formed in two atoms. They stay bonded, they exchange energies, they release some energy and feel stable. Sometimes something more attractive approaches one of those atoms, or both for that matter, maybe. And then obviously they want to break apart from the earlier bond and form a new bond. This goes on in the world of chemistry, in the world of chemical bonding. Is this sounding like a story of atoms or a story of you and me? Isn't it? Finally, what are we? We are nothing but congregation of billions and billions such atoms. So what we behave, the atoms will behave the same. Or contrarily, as atoms are behaving, we are just compiling their behaviors and behaving the same. Whichever way we may like to take, it's okay. So, like atoms, we, people of the same family, stay in the same house. We all seem to be together, perfect and a happy family. But in our hearts, most of us are feeling incomplete, unstable. So we look around for some company, for some exchange, for some interaction. We need friends, we need people. Sometimes we find the right company in our own family. Sometimes we need to look outside our families. Someone approaches us. There are some things we like in a person and some things we don't like. Only when the things we like outweigh the things we don't, we go ahead with a dialogue, we go ahead with an interaction. What is the base of a primary interaction among any two people? Does it start with very small things, like the small electrons, which also may be negatively charged most of the times? We are very happy to interact with someone with whom we can gossip, with whom we can exchange and reconfirm our opinions, our fears, our not so happy about factors, and we click. Like the little negatively charged electrons. We match, we enjoy, we exchange, and we of course feel stable. We get little confirmation, we release a lot of energy. That is how interactions shape in the normal world, isn't it? Friendships flourish. And eventually in the course of time, we may find someone else to whom we feel more attracted, to whom we feel more drawn, and obviously we withdraw from the previous person. We drift apart. We loosen our bonds, or we even break the bonds at times and make new bonds. This is life. It is a life of atoms. It is our life. Now, where comes the turning point? The protons and neutrons in the nucleus of the atom, in the core of an atom, are not easily accessible. And these protons, the atomic number of an atom, is the signature property of that atom. That number of protons and neutrons actually makes that atom. They define the properties of that atom. They give the particular identity for that atom. But these protons and neutrons, the core is often surrounded by the petty electrons. So the protons and neutrons cannot be easily accessed, and they are not interested in taking part in the common interactions, in the common reactions that take place at the peripheral level, at the electronic level of atoms. But when radioactive beams cut across the shield of electrons and hit the nucleus, they hit the core of the atom, transformation comes. It is a radical transformation. It changes the composition of the nucleus of the atoms. It changes the number of protons, the number of neutrons. And we get a complete transformation. The composition of the atom changes. The identity of the atom changes. The core properties of the element change. It does not remain the earlier element at all. It becomes the new element only when the cores are hit. We need radioactive beams, which are unseen forces but extremely effective to bring about this change, to bring about this transformation in the atom. The atoms may then expand, fuse with another atom, or they may break into smaller atoms. Both ways, they are transformed. They have lost their original identities. For better, for sure. Like the atoms, when we get hit at the core, our core values, which are always positive for every being, and we also have the neutral aspects within us that are needed for a transformation. And when that gets hit, we completely change our identity. We get transformed into completely new people, which are different from our earlier versions. Because the core composition, which was the signature of the parent atom, has changed. our core composition has changed. We may expand to become our better versions, or we may break into small fragments to spread more goodness around us, to scatter ourselves. So, story of atoms, not that superficial, not that simple, not just chemistry. When two atoms meet each other in a beaker of a liquid, why liquid? Why not solid? Why not gases? Interactions are difficult in solid because solids are too rigid. They don't have any flexibility, and interaction needs flexibility, molding. So, not in solid. What about gases? Gases are too loose. They have no attachment, no binding. How can they interact? So, two atoms meet or come face to face in a pool of a liquid. There they are free to move, but they are not free to leave the pool. There is the required amount of rigidity, the required amount of flexibility, so the right conducive atmosphere to initiate a bond. Two atoms bump into each other. Coincidence or predestined? Well, digging into that aspect would be a great diversion, and our story may get extended too long. We may contemplate on it some other time, but let's begin our story over here this time. Two atoms met in the pool of a liquid. They meet and they say hello. They keep sailing nearby for some time. They find good orientation, matching energy levels, matching complementary requirements, conducive circumstances. Yes, there are some inhibitions, there are some repulsions. Now, if their mutual conviction of going ahead together plays stronger than the repulsive factors, they tie up with each other and make a merry. Play for a while, exchange, enjoy, energize each other. Eventually, if they find some other forces catching up higher, they drift apart. If they have exchanged contacts when they are together, wherever they move in the beaker, they will always stay in touch, saying hello at a time. Even if big time lapses sometimes, they will reconnect with the same intensity, come ahead, come face to face, time and again, till eternity. But if they have missed out giving addresses to each other, their random Brownian motions will throw them so far away from each other in the beaker that it will be beyond their scope to locate each other, even within that beaker. A catalyst will play a good role over here. We will look at it some other time, the role of a catalyst. But otherwise, it is very difficult to find an atom that has lost contact with us. There is one more angle to it. Atoms in a liquid state have a certain amount of energy which keeps them in that liquid state. If an atom gains enough energy to break the bonds with the surrounding liquid atoms, it will slip off into the higher state, the gaseous state, and then that atom will vaporize. It will go out of that beaker, and from that bounded liquid state, it will move into the free state, gaseous state, and fly off. Never to be a part of that liquid again. It will be a free bird. It will leave the beaker, and it may even lose its urge to bind, to come back. He may still cut off like two atoms within the beaker, inaccessible to each other. But he will leave a feeling of divinity for the atoms in the beaker. The atoms in the beaker will look up to him that, oh, how he has freed himself. Even we would want to gain that energy and free ourselves someday. So they become the role models. All in all, Mr. Atoms in the beaker, if both of you are facing each other, and if you are going to miss each other, keep the contacts exchanged. You never know. कल तड़प ना पड़े याद में जिनके, रोक लो रूठ कर उनको जाने न दो. बाद में प्यार के चाहे भेजो हजारों सलाम, वो फिर नहीं आते, वो फिर नहीं आते. Hold on to them. Don't let them go. And if drifting away and never to meet again is fine with even one of them, the other has no choice but to drift away. Be ready to be thrown apart in the pool of unpredictability and never to find again. यथा काष्ठं च काष्ठं च समेयाता महोदधौ, समेत्यच्च व्यपेयातां तद्वद्भूत समागमः. Like two blocks, two planks of wood meet in the ocean, flow together for some time, and then one wave comes and drifts them apart, never to meet again. People, lives are like that in the ocean of the universe. So, choice is yours, for life is yours. Is it? Really? Jate jate, on a cheeky note, do we really have choices for our own lives? So many times we tend to believe that it is in our conscious control to keep in touch with someone or not. But actually, if your frequencies have internally matched, your radar has recorded the other person's frequencies, and destiny will put you face to face someday again. It's a myth we enjoy that we decide for ourselves. Debatable issue. Believe in whatever pleases you. Don't we see such stories in movies often? They are not stories, they are our reflections. stories of atoms, stories of you and me. Finally, we are made up of atoms, and atoms make us. Stay tuned for some more such explorations. Thank you.